Welcome to Chaos Divided, a podcast exploring the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle Snurgle and BlushingNoiseMarine, and today we're talking about how to build a positive community amongst your local 40k players. So, this week's quote is, "We must find our friends where we can and make those bonds count," which is from Saturnine by Dan Abnett, which is part of the Siege of Terra series, and I thought it was a fitting start.
That's a really great quote. Make those bonds count.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't read that book, and I couldn't find who the characters are, but it felt appropriately heresy, like over the top, like so.
Especially with this community, we are finding our friends.
You know, and I think that's really the gist of this episode is finding your friends and being a friend yourself to others. So
correct. And how and where to find those friends.
So one of the best elements of 40k is the community. It's what gives us that social element to every part of the hobby, and we've talked about that. There's a social element to everything we do. So building a positive community takes a commitment and attitude from every single member of that community. So to get us started, who's the most important part if you're trying to make a positive community? It's yourself. It's making sure you're a positive element of the community. So I'm going to ask you, what makes a good hobbyist?
Oh, a loaded question. I don't think there's a directly perfect answer to it, because what is a hobbyist? What makes it good? Like, you painting for 5 minutes a day because that's what you can commit, that makes you a good hobbyist, because you are putting what you personally can commit to and what makes you feel good. It doesn't matter if you're competing with someone else, or you can paint your non-metallic metal like this person, or you can make a gory space marine like Maverick paints. Like, you are putting your heart and soul into this hobby, and that's what makes you a good hobbyist.
I love that. Now, this is maybe where it gets a little more complicated, because what makes a good, I guess, player, a good opponent? When you're actually playing the game, how can you be like a great player?
Again, another loaded question. I think this one takes practice. I think this one you find what kind of player you are. I know I've had my struggles. I know I've had to learn what kind of opponent I am and what I can be. And what I've learned is be transparent. Like, this is a tough game sometimes, especially at tournaments. We're mostly talking like tournament-wise. Obviously, your narrative game is going to be a lot more casual. But as an opponent in a tournament scene, being transparent, in the sense of, like, I've found myself sometimes dehydrated or lack of food, and I'll get this look on my face, and I can maybe sense that my opponent is worried about me, but I just let them know, like, I need some food, or I had a rough night last night, and just letting them know, like, it's not you, it's me. Or just like letting them know how you are feeling at the time, because people are gonna like speculate, they're gonna like look at your body language or how you are as a player, and just communicate.
I can confirm, I don't think I've ever seen you at a tournament without some baby carrots or some like some celery. We can bring some French and some crudité. So
it is a must. And it is not only just like, okay, this is something I've learned being a tournament player. Sidebar, I need food throughout the day. Like, I've tried to do the eat during lunch, scarf your face and get back to the game. I have tried not eating. I have tried other things, and I get massive headaches. I get a little hangry, and it's just, I can't think. And I've found having a container of baby carrots or something to snack on throughout the day, just, it levels me out.
You know, though, I think that's a good point, is, you know, self-care is also
Mm-hmm.
how you make sure you're in the right, mind frame, the right mindset to be a good player, to be a good opponent. We're not talking about skill here. We're talking about somebody who, you know, other people want to play a game with. And
Yes.
I think that's kind of that, cornerstone of a positive community, is being somebody that, if we're talking about a hobbyist, like, even if you don't play the game and you're somebody who paints, or you like the lore, like, being the person that other people feel comfortable talking about and get excited talking about is, I think, what we all want. Like, I've talked to Blood God, and it was like immediately we started talking about the heresy, and it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never had a game with him, but immediately I'm like, no, I want to talk to you more about this,
Yeah.
because his excitement is palpable, and like,
Mm-hmm.
he has like a memory for quotes. Like, I've read a bunch
It's
of the books,
insane.
and he'll be like, oh yeah, in this book over that, then I'm like, I don't even remember half of what you're talking about.
During COVID, we used to stream and we just paint, and he would just sit and just da 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 all heresy, and people would be in the chat be like, "Do you have like it pulled up on a monitor in front of you?" It's like, no. They're like, "You have an eidetic memory." It's like, yeah, he loves it. He always has the audiobooks going on. He is. I would say that it probably like helped shape and save his life in a sense. Like he found himself in this Warhammer community. He's been in it since he was 14, so 20 years. So yeah, it's really shaped him, and he loves it.
So no, I think that's like a huge part of, like, being somebody who's positive in the community, is, even if you're not at the table, still being somebody who's just like a joy to be around and to share like the hobby with, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is like a huge part of it. And then, yeah, taking care of yourself at a tournament, even if it's just a pickup game, like making sure you're in like a good mood, you're in like the right headspace, because like,
Mm-hmm.
you're there to have fun.
Get your
Like,
sleep the night before, people. I know
right?
your model needs to get painted, but your sleep comes first.
Battle ready is not that high of a standard. Just like, get paint on it and go to bed.
Yeah.
The night before is not the time to win best painted.
Although Midwinter Minis did it for Golden Demon like 3 days before, and he won a finalist pin. So
I
he does
saw
show.
that.
Yeah.
I think that takes a special skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think part of, having that positive mindset is also, you know, being the light you want in your community can also
Mm-hmm.
be helpful. Like, I think, we're very lucky where we are, that the
Mm-hmm.
community is so positive, and that there
Mm-hmm.
is, there's not really a lot of those guys, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better term. So I think we're in a position where it's very easy to feel positive, because when you go to an event, everyone's excited to be there, and it just feels good to like see everyone.
For sure. Like even when I started, even on social media, and I've done a couple interviews, especially back in 2019, 2020. People would often ask me, well, how often do you run into that guy? Or do people mention you being a female or treat you differently? I was like, no, not even a little bit here. Like it's pretty amazing. And I've counted my blessings for that. Um, and I'm happy to contribute to this community here.
And yeah, I think it's an important thing. Like, if you're not in maybe as bright of a community, that, you show the way. And like, just
Mm-hmm.
because other people are maybe not being as great, that's not an excuse for you to kind of like go low. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you show a path forward of being, a positive, fun, joyful player that, takes the game as a game and doesn't take it too seriously, and is, gracious when you lose and is gracious when you win, other people are going to catch on, because it's going to feel better to play against you, and people are going to
Yeah.
want to play with you, and you're going to change that culture.
Mm-hmm. People love to mirror one another. Like, I'll go into a little personal thing, but like one thing I like to do when I go for walks is smile. And I've noticed that uh, if another person sees that, they smile. And the same thing with like playing your games. If you're having fun, others are going to have fun with you too, because we all just want to have fun as people.
I think if we can all channel a little bit of Nick Frage from Play On when a vehicle explodes, if we can all have like an ounce of that joy for our opponent when things go well, I think you're going to have 10 times better games.
Yes.
Like, you know, if you can have that type of just energy and just like be excited for when cool things happen on the board, no matter how it affects you.
Yep.
You know, when somebody makes that 12-inch charge, yeah, it might throw off your strategy. With them,
like...
but that's awesome. That's that's a 3% chance. Be excited in the moment. Like that's a like, you know, sure, it might be negative for you. You might not have wanted them to make the charge, but they did, and that's cool. And that's kind of the point of the game, is having those like big swings and those like narrative moments, I think, even if you are playing competitively.
Yeah, one of my first games at the GT, I whispered at him and I was like, just to let you know, you're my first stranger opponent I've ever played against. And I'm super nervous. And he goes, yeah, me too. I was like, oh, sweet. And then we just played, and you could tell we were still kind of a little nervous. But then I started to see him win, and I just saw this big grin on his face, and I was so happy for him. And he was just, when he took the W, I was like, awesome. And then I got a bye the next round. I was like, sweet. I can just relax.
I was at GT, and I was not doing so well. It was my kind of second tournament, and there was like a bye round and somebody left, and I ended up getting matched like way further up on kind of the like skill table. So I knew I was gonna lose, and like I was like, you know, I sit down my models, and he was just like, you know, are you okay with this? And I was just like, I'm just here to play Warhammer, man. Like I don't expect to win. I don't care. I just want to like move some models around. Right? Like I want to roll some dice. And he was just like, okay. And he like the relief was palpable, because he was like, he didn't want to crush my like spirit. But also it's no fun to play against somebody when like, you know, you're worried that they're going to be like a sore loser. It's like, you know, it's a tournament. He's there to play a game and to play competitively and get points. And like, you know, I was just like, no, like you do your thing. Like you
Let's
go
see
100%.
How badly you could crush me.
Yeah, like I'm here to learn. Like destroy me if you need to. That's the point of this game. Like so I think, you know, having that kind of like excitement to play will translate into like positivity no matter how your games are going.
For sure.
Now that's kind of on the inside work, like but it takes at least 2 to tango, because you can't, well, I guess you could play Warhammer by yourself, but that would be a very long game.
You know what? Maybe one day I'll do that, just for some content. I'll do a live stream.
Actually, I think there's a guy locally here who he plays like solitaire Warhammer, and
wow,
I'm like, that's a commitment.
Now, I will admit, sometimes I've done it once or twice, but only like I just want to see my movement phase. I just want to see where I place my models, but I've never done a full game.
I was
Solitaire
impressed.
Warhammer, I love that.
I mean, it's a good way to learn 2 armies simultaneously.
But now, if you're talking to yourself, then like or answering and
yeah, I don't think you need the like dialogue. Man, I think you can like.
Although that might not be a bad idea, because it gets you into the lingo and the vocabulary. So I don't know.
Yeah,
let's look into that.
To answer yourself. You can still play with intention with yourself, I guess. But you know, building a community, it takes patience, it takes time, and it takes effort. And I think the important thing is you don't have to build it alone. You know, any vibrant community, Warhammer, not Warhammer, is when people come together and have kind of a shared vision, a shared goal. And, you know, we're going to talk about kind of a few different scenarios, because like, you know, if you're in a big urban center, you're going to have a very different reality of like, it's more about finding the community that makes sense for you. Whereas if you're in like a small town, you're usually just like desperately trying to find a few people to play a game with.
Mm-hmm.
So, finding a few people can make all the difference, just to like start building those groups and finding ways to play. So, if you don't have a local game store, what do you do? Uh, so even a small league can be a great way to get folks together, helps
Mm-hmm.
people meet each other. I think even in Halifax, you guys had a league last summer, just to help, again, people that haven't played before play each other.
Yep. And just like, yeah, doing it at the local store. But I think where you're located, there wasn't really much of any Warhammer, was there, until Basement Wargaming?
Yeah, so I think there'd been kind of a small community and they'd kind of petered off, and then COVID kind of
Mm-hmm.
restarted it. And kind of gathered everyone together. And that community, I've been playing for almost a year now, and I think it's gone from, I think, 8-10 people in total, with maybe like 4 or 6 of them being like consistent, to like
Mm-hmm.
closer to 20 players. 10 of them are pretty consistent, like players. So and that's in a pretty rural area.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 20-30,000 people in total. There isn't a local game store. Like, it's kitchen table, basement, like Warhammer. But yeah, I think one of the big things that kind of got us knowing each other, we have a little Discord,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a league, and that kind of, I think, introduced everyone to each other. And since then, we've had some like tournaments and kind of game days. And it's amazing how, kind of, as you add people on and everyone gets to know each other, it kind of like, it can very quickly build into something bigger than you think it is.
For sure. And then like the more it grows, and the more like these little subcultures will start to form as well, in little groups, and it just multiplies.
Absolutely, yeah. And you get to, from, oh, like, I would just like to play a game, to like, oh, it's been a while since I've played with so and so, and you start organizing, and people kind of find ways to have games. And if somebody picks up a new army, or somebody's doing something different, or they want to try a new list, and like, you can have kind of that like big community spirit with a smaller group of people, as long as
Mm-hmm.
everyone's kind of like engaged.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have 80, you might be playing the same people over and over again, but if you're playing different armies and you're playing different missions, and that, you can go a long way.
Yeah, and then you can add on online community to that as well. It doesn't have to be just in your group. You can add TTS, which is Tabletop Simulator, and then get the Warhammer version and practice with that. Or even watching Twitch. You can watch other people play Warhammer, or even War Games live on YouTube, and join in on that community. And don't have to play it, but you can interact, learn all the strats.
I mean, I will fully admit, what got me back into Warhammer was, watching Play On,
Mm-hmm.
Tabletop Tactics, kind of relearning the game through other people playing, and having kind of the confidence to, you know,
Right. They have the
understand the game.
confidence, therefore you're mirroring that confidence.
Absolutely. Because really, I'm not 17 anymore. I don't want to sit down and read the rule book like cover to cover anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So like being able to see a game, understand how stratagems interact, and like getting to exposed to things is
Mm-hmm.
an easier way of like figuring things out, than trying to be like, all right, in this interaction, that's how that works. Like, so it's a
Yeah.
way to kind of like experience the game without having to necessarily like participate in it directly.
Mm-hmm. And it gets you out of your echo chamber as well. Because like your local group can read one rule one way and always play it that way, like house rules kind of thing. But then you see it on a grander scale, and it's completely different from across the world.
It's true. So yeah, as far as building a community, you don't need to like beat yourself up
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a smaller area and it feels impossible. I think getting out there, you just need to start with one other person,
Mm-hmm.
and you can build up from there. It's
Mm-hmm.
really, it's a longer process, and you might seem easier to just be able to walk into a game store on a pickup night and play some Warhammer, but that doesn't mean you can't get to a similar point.
Mm-hmm. It does take the time, the patience, and the effort. Um, it, it's so true. You build it, and they will come.
And even if you have, you don't have a local store that hosts Warhammer, but they are a board game cafe or something,
Mm-hmm.
or they have like Magic Nights, offer to help like set one up. If there's
Yep.
a small community that has some terrain and some mats, and you can kind of gather together and put a few tables together and start a pickup night, or have a small kind of organized tournament or game day, that's how you also start building some awareness. And you'd be surprised how many players are in your local community.
Mm-hmm.
There's
I'll share a little story that I actually did that with Blood God and another friend of ours. Um, we worked at a restaurant all together, and we knew that one of the days it wasn't really used that much. So we're like, hey, can we host a little Warhammer RTT up top? And they're like, sure. And we planned it all out. It was unfortunately during COVID, so it was a lot harder with the restrictions and making sure that everything was 6 feet apart. That was the most difficult part. But it was great to put it together. Obviously, it was our first thing putting together, and it was a little rickety. But the moment that I put the Facebook post up, it was just a flood of people. It was sold out. People signed up I've never even heard of or seen, and everybody offered to help because they wanted it. People want it too. Sometimes they don't know how to put it together, but if you feel confident in putting it together, do it because others will help. And we got mats, we got terrain, and it was great. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I think it can sometimes seem daunting. It's like, okay, do I want to commit to organizing this
Hmm.
big thing, and I'm gonna have to organize the next thing and the next thing? And the reality is, you probably aren't. People are gonna want to contribute along the way. They're gonna want to be helpful, and even just once you've figured out a bit of a process for it,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes way easy. Oh, buddy over there has 2 sets of terrain, and there's a few mats here, and oh, so and so has some tables, and it just kind of becomes a like, oh, and you put
Yes.
it back together the next time, um, which really makes it a lot easier. So I think
We all
it's
we all have our parts to play. Like, yes, that person's the train person. This person's the organizer. This person has mats. Like, you work symbiotically together. It's fun.
there's a guy locally. He has a lot of like old Necromunda terrain, and it's an
Mm.
absolute blast. It's like cardboard buildings,
Uh-huh.
but it's an absolute blast to play on because it's so vertical, and it's
Thematic.
yeah, it's a very different board than like your typical ninth edition board.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's cluttered, it's messy. You're like, I don't know how to get a tank through here.
But
Like,
that's okay because this feels so real.
right? You're just like, we're just doing it, and it's gonna be fun. And you're like, I'm playing him is the only time I've ever had to worry about distance from a vertical standpoint. I was like, I don't even know if is it. Do you have to count this? He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you do. And I was like, okay, all right. I don't know if I'm in range or not then. Like,
Was he just stuck up
so
there the entire game?
it was what was it? There was he was playing Eldar, so he had a bunch of things that flew. He put something like
Oh.
way up on a building, and I was like trying to shoot it with a melt-a-gun. And I was like, so you only have 12 inches. And I was like, I don't, it's like you're 6 inches, the building's 6 inches away, but I'm like, I don't know if I can hit that. So,
Just
but
goes
it was an absolute
pew.
blast, right? It was like a little slag ball just like stuck to the side of the building. But yeah, so like you never know what people have, and especially
Mm-hmm.
folks that have been in the hobby forever. Like, I have one of the Realms of Battle tables, like the big plastic tables Games Workshop made like 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's an absolute blast to play on. It's too big for a modern like battle, but it's got a big hill in the middle of it, and it's like a ton of
Mm.
fun to play on. So it adds a whole element of verticality,
Mm-hmm.
and so again, you never know what people are going to have, and you're going to have like way more fun games than you think you were going to with just like what you and maybe a buddy have together.
Yeah. And again, like you don't have to do it by yourself. You're not, you don't have to do it solely.
Everyone else is also looking for other people to play with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are going to be more excited than you think they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've got some unique experience with building a community. If you want to talk a little
Yes.
bit about it.
So yeah, like I mentioned before, the building it and they will come. We started a streaming um, battle report kind of thing, and I remember walking in and seeing the table and seeing the camera set up, and it was just amazed. I saw potential in my eyes, and I'm like, this is so cool. Like, if if someone like me who doesn't like to watch battle reports wants to watch this, perhaps other people would want to. And this was during COVID, and so obviously there wasn't much going on, and so uh, there. It was mentioned that it was tried before, but it didn't work out, and because like people kind of flake. But I was like, I was so determined at the time. I was like, you know what? No, watch. You show commitment, you show dedication, you show passion, and people will be attracted to that, and they'll come to it like flies and moths to a light. And it started off slowly, just like you said, and we had people gather around, and after just consistently doing it every week, showing like, hey, no, this is what we really want to do. We want to do battle reports and show off. Like, honestly, like at the brass tacks of it all, I've always wanted to show off this community here to the world. That's why I have Nurgle Snurgle, and I've taken pictures, and that's one of the elements I wanted to do, was like to show off the talent, to show off like the amazing opponents here. And so built that, and then it just started to snowball, and people were coming with all their terrain and wanted to just drop it off and help out. And then we had people asking, hey, can I come on stream, and can I come on? And it was amazing, and it was a great opportunity during COVID to also keep the community um, together as well, because other than that, there was nothing going on. And yes, we of course we were being safe, and there's lots of distancing and sanitizing and stuff like that. But it was just a great way to, like I said, connect with one another, and then we had group chats and Discord. So it's just like I said, it came from nothing, and it snowballed into something amazing. And now the community is huge. Like we have to have like separate stores. Like there's one across the water, one here in Halifax, and it's always full with people. And the RTTs, they sell out like hotcakes. Like sometimes you're on the wait list just to play an RTT. So it was beautiful to see how strong the community did we contribute to that. I'd like to think so. I don't think, like, we're talking about building a community, but I think perhaps maybe having the mindset of contributing to the community. Like, it doesn't have to start from scratch. Like, we all are adding to it, and like even this community as a whole, whether it's online or in person, it's like we said with the game, it's a living organism. It just keeps growing and growing, and we keep adding to it, and we keep learning, and we keep teaching. And So that's how I felt like with streaming the battle reports, was just another contribution to this community.
And I didn't have the opportunity to go on, but I did play a game just at that table. It was after Hurricane Fiona. I hadn't had power in like 6 days, and I was like, I need to get out of here and do something. So I drove in at like almost midnight to play a game of Warhammer. And there's something about having playing in a studio versus playing in like a game store on a kitchen table. Even though it wasn't streamed, there's just a certain like je ne sais quoi about like how it feels. It felt more official almost, and it felt elevated just because you're playing in this space that's like dedicated to Warhammer, and it's not very often you have a space like that.
No, it was very, it was very nice.
So I think having spaces like that in communities are also other ways of like you said, contributing. I like that. Maybe you should have written more of this than me, because that's way better wording. Contributing to your community. But
I just thought of that on the walk here, so.
But no, I think that's a huge part of it, is like contributing to what everyone else is doing and finding ways to make it, better.
Right. I think because I think some people may get stuck in their heads, and I've been there as well. It's like, how do I build a community? I'm just like one person. I'm just like this. I'm not that special to build a community from scratch. No. It's, what can you add to it? Who are you? What spice of life are you to this community? And we all have a special place here.
It's amazing. Something as broad as Warhammer and the hobby, everyone has such unique skills, and everybody has their thing, and how those things interact and how those things interlace. And just, you're also not just a Warhammer player. People have different careers, professions, they bring different things to the table. And, you might not think like, okay, I'm not necessarily, gonna lead the charge, but maybe a bunch of people that own venues, and you can connect other people who are maybe tournament organizers and help build it out in that way. Like, there's hundreds and thousands of different ways that you can help strengthen the fabric of your local community.
Yeah, like for example here, like it's just a group of us that don't have any skin in the game. We just want to have good games, and we held a GT back in January, I believe. It was a connection from Tyler from Basement Wargaming with his buddy, who introduced him into Warhammer, that got him into the connection of at the Shearwater gymnasium. And the guy didn't play, but it was just that extra connection that if Tyler wasn't in the community, we wouldn't know.
And shout out, check out Basement Wargaming on YouTube. I have been on there. They're a ton of fun, and Tyler's a fantastic player, fantastic Tyranid player.
He won a GT too last year. Were you there for that?
I was.
Oh, that was amazing.
I think I'm the first person in like 2 years to beat him on his channel. So if you want to find that, I had a Tau commander punch Old One Eye in the face after being charged by Old One Eye. So I'm a little proud of that.
Punched him in the one eye that he has.
Right? These no eyes now. But Tyler does some great jobs with his battle reports. They're like 15 to 20 minutes. They're super easy to watch. So I encourage you to check them out. They're a ton of fun. And that's part of like, I think, building up some of the other parts of the community, like being on a battle report that's filmed versus like one that isn't. It feels a little different. And I find it pushes you to be a better player. Because you want to, present your best, self as a player. Oh,
for sure. Like when we went to mini wargaming, wow! I've described it like stepping into a portal, and it sure was. Like once we stepped in, you're like, I feel like a space marine now. Woohoo! Going down the corridors, and then you go into the room, and it's all themed out, like the chaos room and like the Sigmar, and it's like, wow, there's so much detail, and you feel excited. And you're like, this is why I'm here. Like the Warhammer aspect, and it felt like you're in a living video game.
That would be really cool. I think I watched the videos you were in, and they looked like an absolute blast.
And then and someone like Scary, he's such a joy to play against. Another person that you can feel infectious around. Like he just has just so much love, so much just like enthusiasm for the game, and you feel it, and you're like, yeah, I want to be enthusiastic with you, Scary.
I've watched a few Sigmar battle reports. One of them was Scary, and one of them Jinx from Tabletop Tactics, both playing Heed Knights of Slaanesh. And I didn't want to play Sigmar before watching them, but just like the sheer joy they had, and then like Slaanesh, I love like the models, I love the lore of Slaanesh, and I was just like, I didn't know if I wanted to play Sigmar before, but like you have made it seem so fun. I am totally into it. So no, I think those are exciting and interesting ways of like creating, I guess, alternative spaces beyond like, you know, competitive and casual is like, I guess like communal Warhammer. I don't know. I'm not coming up with a great word, but so I guess going into our next topic is helping keep your community positive. So, you know, Warhammer is an up and down living organism. It's a nurgling all of its own.
We're actually inside of a nurgling.
Is it the sub-nurgling? Is that are they like Russian nesting dolls? Are there nurglings inside nurglings?
Yeah, but like it's through their stomach.
That's the gross answer I was expecting. But yeah, as far as like taking care of yourself, also taking care of others, you know, like you said, you know, you've had games where like you've not felt at 100%, and I'm sure you've had opponents that have been understanding of that, and like not just like been like, I don't want to play with you anymore, you're the worst, you're terrible. People are also people, and they're able to have bad days, and it's okay.
Yeah, and like even just having a chat afterwards, after the game, helps a lot. And yeah, I've seen it with my opponents as well. Like we're all humans, we all have our own stresses, and it weighs on us in different ways, and it's no fault to anybody. And
I think, you know, we talked about this a little bit in the first episode about how kind of Warhammer's on, I think, the cusp of a golden age of like the community is right about to kind of blow open. And
we're there. We're gonna blow.
I think it has blown open. I think it's just gonna keep blowing open. Like it's, you know, I think it's a whole new world of Warhammer, and I almost said Warcraft there. So. We'd get comments on that. But I think also being somebody who doesn't put up with hate or discrimination is also huge. You know, if you're in, you know, your local community, you're at the game store or something, and somebody's trying to gatekeep or make somebody feel like they don't belong, you know, I think step up and be like, hey, not cool.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go and lose your mind and start yelling and screaming at people, but just being like, hey, no, everyone's welcome here. And
also talking to others as well. Like if someone, because sometimes this happens privately, or they kind of pick at you, or without people around, being transparent with others as well. Like letting a friend know, letting the manager know that like, hey, this person's kind of making me feel this way. I just want to let you know. I don't know if it's going to happen again. I don't know if it's going to like be with someone else, but having someone know, like you got to do it with work. Like you got to let, if there's a problem happening, they need to know at first. And then if it progresses and there's a pattern, then it can be addressed, and then it can be dealt with accordingly.
Yeah, because I think, as we see Warhammer become a more diverse hobby, there's going to be situations where somebody is maybe, the first woman in a group, or, whatever, the first queer person in a group, and there might be people that have a hard time with that, and tending towards openness, welcomeness, inclusivity is going to make the hobby stronger, not weaker. So just help out people. If you're at an event and there's somebody who's in the corner and nobody's talking to them, be the person that welcomes them.
Yep. Like there's a guy here, he's a phenomenal player, Jonathan. The first couple GTs, he used to sit by himself at the table just eating his lunch, and now he's like directing the GTs. Everybody wants to know, like, how are you so good? Like he's top. Like if you guys ever check out the BCP apps during a Halifax GT, you will see him at 1 or 2. I beat him once though. Oh no, I did not beat him. Sorry. I placed higher than him, but only because he was given a meme list. It was like an RTT. There's 3 guys. They're like, I'm going to give you a list and you're going to give someone a list. So it wasn't like his best army, but I was like, oh, I placed higher than you? Oh my God.
I came close to winning one time, and that was because he's a phenomenal player, and like just like a very technical player. Like it's frightening how good he is.
Oh, he already knows what your gameplay is while you're playing.
And I think I managed to almost tilt him because I played differently than he was expecting, and it ended up being like an 80 to 60 instead of the the previous game we had was like a 97 to 13. So,
but point being, again, he was in that corner by himself, and now he is a spearhead for us.
So my next point is here. You don't know who your next favorite player is going to be. So helping someone learn the hobby today, welcoming someone, just being the person who reaches out, says hello,
smile.
talks to somebody at a break.
How'd your game go? Or, oh, I love your models. Like even going around taking pictures and how did you do that technique? Like people love interaction, and that's one thing we can do at tournaments or even in a casual play, your local store. People just like to connect.
Absolutely. So no, I think no community is made better by gatekeeping. So just having kind of that spirit of welcomeness is going to make your local community better, because no community is made worse by having more people contributing.
Right.
So yeah, Warhammer is best when shared. That's really, I think, the point at the end of the day. I think we try and focus on the positive, but I think this episode is really about like how you can like actually bring that positivity into the hobby and bring it with you wherever you go. And if I never hear that like, oh, this city has a toxic community, or like, oh, you don't want to go to that event because there's a bunch of toxic players, like if I never heard that again, I would be stoked. And I think we all would be.
Do you hear that?
Like I've heard that from like there's some cities even where it's like,
oh yes, online, yes,
like, yeah, where like it's
very shocking.
It's like it's gotten so competitive and angry that people aren't even really like excited about things anymore, and that just seems unfortunate.
Yeah, and like if that's not what you want, you don't have to stick with that. Like we said, like this community, this game, this hobby, whatever it is is not one thing. It can be whatever your imagination is. Like, that is the coolest thing that we have, is the imagination and what we can make. And you can, like, I've had points in the beginning of this hobby where, because I'll be frank, I have never been a part of a community ever in my life. The last thing was maybe grade 7 volleyball. That was it. And so the rest was just work. I used to travel alone. I would work. So I was pretty much like a lone wolf until this Warhammer community. And I've been blown away every single time by the connection, by the love that people have for one another. And I remember in the beginning when I created something and I took something from my brain to the table, and I bursted in tears. And I was like, this was more for like a D&D thing, but I burst into tears and I was like, holy, I get it. I finally get why people love this role playing, this tabletop gaming. And I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And I want to continue. And here I am now. And it, yeah, there's the sharing, the caring, the love. It's just beautiful. So, like, yes, if you do have a toxic area, my heart goes out to you. I'm really sorry that is happening to you. You're not alone. If you found us, this podcast, you've obviously have found us through social media, and that's where you can find and grow a community. One of my favorite things I used to do when I was starting out, instead of just finding like all like the popular content creators, I used to just go into Warhammer 40k tags. I'd go into the recents and I would just look at what people are posting at that exact time, because I was trying to beat the algorithm, because I wanted to see what the people are doing right now. And I connected with them, and even just leaving a like and a comment builds that community. It makes someone else feel good about their work. It makes you feel good. It's just all good. Sorry, I kind of went on a little tangent there.
No, I'm like, I don't know if I could say anything that's gonna top that, because that was perfect. No, I perfect.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess that was my love letter to the community.
Now, I did want to throw it out there that folks that want to send us questions and have them answered on the podcast can. So we do have a question. Do we want to tackle it, or do we want to save it for next week?
Ooh, how do we want to do that? Let's do it now. Let's do it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
let's not give them that cliffhanger.
So our first question from Deathcard Solitar is they're asking about narrative play versus competitive play. They said we talked about tournaments previously, but they were curious, I guess, on our opinion on like playing out a crusade or playing a single mission, I guess more casually, with maybe an army that isn't battle forged, but just letting kind of the dice tell a story of like the heroic guard squad sergeant, or the moment when a captain takes revenge after a chapter master falls. So I guess just looking at kind of like the narrative play versus competitive play, and I guess what that means.
Does it mean like for us personally what we think of them?
Yeah. Well, I think the whole podcast is our personal opinions.
Yeah, it's true. So the thing is, like, you know what? They're fantastic. The few that I've done are so fun. For example, I've played a 3-way with a Blood God and another guy, and he had his Necrons. Blood God had something corn, maybe corn demons, and then I had Nurgle demons, and we just made up deployment zones, didn't matter, made up objectives, and we just like, obviously when it's a 3-way, you have 2 people versus 1. And then you make deals, and then you make these these fun scenarios, and that's all it is. And creating, like you said, like with the terrain, like making a battlefield, having it being thematic, and like I said, with your imagination, letting your imagination just kind of escape for like a little while, couple hours. It does this thing where you're in like a flow state. You're not even like in this vessel, you're not even in this universe, you are somewhere, you are teleported, and it's so much fun. And I wish I would play more Crusade and narrative. You can Blood God will attest that he has tried many times. I'm just like, well, I'm usually pretty busy, but those games are precious, and you'll always remember them.
I mean, if you have another Warhammer player in your own house, I feel like a Crusade would be, that's the easiest Crusade you're ever going to take part in.
You guys think it's so easy, but we are chefs. He works a lot, and then the days that he has off, we hobby a lot more than we game. He just finished Angron.
I saw that. It was
he's very
an
proud.
Impressive Angron.
He came in at like 6:45 in the morning. He's like, check it out. It's like, okay, let me just wake up.
He is the angriest Ron I think I've seen so far. So,
what about yourself? How would you answer that question?
You know what? I haven't played Crusade. I haven't had an opportunity to play that, but I have played kind of more narrative, like less like competitive games. Actually, one of my favorite games I've ever played, it was against Space Wolves. I was playing Emperor's Children. It was 750 points. We've been doing kind of an escalation league locally, and it was honestly an absolute blast. You play them still on the smaller board size, so kind of the Combat Patrol board size, and it was just such a like, who's gonna hit who hardest, fastest, firstest, and it was like so back and forth. Like, he made some crazy charges, I had a few like plays that went really well, and it was just like one of those like every turn was neck and neck up until like turn 4. Like, it was a beautiful game. There was so many like, he made a charge in, I like brought some Terminators back to clean up and like kill a chapter master. I had like a single NoiseMarine kill like one of the wolf riders that he should not have happened. Like, just one of those like super narrative moments. So I like to find the narrative moments in every game. Like, I really I don't feel that it's like narrative versus competitive, because I've had some incredibly narrative moments in competitive play.
Yeah.
Actually, I can think back to one of our games where I think you made a very early like Great Unclean One charge in when I was playing Tau, and it was just like,
that's right, when we went to Morks.
Yeah. It was just like the stompiest Great Unclean One, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do here. And it was just like surrounded by crisis suits, and it was like, it felt like it was out of a book, because it was literally like us, a line of crisis suits trying to like beat back this Great Unclean One. So
I needed to what was it, the railgun?
Yeah.
I needed to destroy that. I was like, I need to get rid of that. that thing's gone.
It was like long strike.
He just made the charges, and I can tell you that in my head he was like a ballerina, just going da 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 da, because he just destroyed in your backlines from one by one. And I was like,
I think, and I couldn't kill him. Like, I couldn't actually get rid of him, so I just had to scatter my army out, which was like also very Tau. They were like all running in different directions. So like, no, I think there's beautiful narrative moments. There's the dice to tell stories throughout every game. But yeah, I think those narrative moments, like I've played lists where, like Lucius, for example, Lucius is not the most like competitively tuned character, but he's ridiculous and so much fun to play. I played Blood Angels once, and they did their like turn 1 charge thing.
Yeah.
And Lucius like used his whip. I used a stratagem to make like the whole army fight last, basically. And like got to like, you know, I had all these like blood angels with thunder hammers, and they're all just like standing there waiting while I got to clobber them. And, you know,
Love that.
having those moments completely changed the game. You know, it wasn't necessarily that we were playing like this big narrative scenario, but just like the way it played out was super interesting. You know, Blood Angels versus Emperor's Children is like the fast against the fast.
The bloody versus the bloody.
Yeah, you know, getting a bunch of fight last when Abaddon's standing right next to you is not the best outcome for you. So it was a lot of fun.
Depends on who you're asking. I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, if you're a Chaos player, Abaddon's always happy, you know, on your side. And if you're not a Chaos player, then you hate seeing Abaddon. And he's broken, so...
Yeah. P.S. GW, make a new Lucius model. I think he could be badass. Like, give him, like, a proper size model. Oh.
No. Keep him on the tiny base, though. No. That's hard. No,
I get why.
Keep him on the little guards of it, but he is like a ballerina. He's a dancer. He's
just like on a tippy toe on the.
Yeah, like you can, you know, maybe make the proportions make a little more sense and give him a little more detail, but like keep him on that tiny little base so that he can just like pirouette his way around a battlefield.
Yeah.
There's nothing funnier than putting him in the center of a block of Terminators and just being like, what are you going to do about it?
He doesn't look like he should fit there. Like, and he's a character.
He's
just too old.
The bestest character.
Yeah. I love him, though. I played him against him once, and I'm like, yeah, I like him. He's cool.
His silly little whip, he's like awful to move around the battlefield. I love him.
Yeah.
He's also just like the most ridiculous character. But
anyways, thank you for that question, Death Guard Solitaire.
And keep them coming. If there's anyone else that has questions, if you're on Spotify, I think you can actually leave answers. Yeah.
Okay.
And if not, you can send us either a message on Instagram or I guess that's probably the easiest way.
Or you can follow my Discord as well.
There we go.
There we go.
I didn't want to invite people to your Discord.
It's fine.
I didn't feel that'd be rude.
No, everyone's invited. Until I kick you out because you're being a...
Well, I think we're at the end of it, so I want to thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided. You can find us on social media at Nurgle_Snurgle and at BlushingNoiseMarine. And until next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao for now.